Chief, talk about where are we this morning?
We are at the Columbus Police Academy.
Talk about the importance of this facility, and because right now we know the division's dealing with, I guess, a shortage of manpower.
Well, the nation is dealing with a shortage of personnel across the country because a lot of people aren't necessarily, running to join the profession of law enforcement. We're hoping to change that narrative. So this building is important because this is where it all starts. This is where we train our recruits to be the best of the best. This is where they're going to get the knowledge. This is where they're going to learn how to be a team. This is where they're going to get the fundamentals to be able to go out and make our city and our streets safe.
And in an effort to bring in more talent to the city, you all are now, it's a transfer?
Lateral. So the lateral program is designed to give officers that are already in the profession an opportunity to transition to the Columbus Division of Police. We're not new to this, or it's not new to the nation. People are doing it all across the nation. You can take a law enforcement officer that has significant experience and bring a different perspective to Columbus, like officers from Dayton, Cleveland, and then eventually we'll be venturing outside the state. But right now, we were focused particularly for officers that are already OPATA certified within the state of Ohio. And what it does is give them an opportunity to come over. They already are law enforcement officers. They already have experience. We teach them how to police Columbus way. We teach them new city codes. We make sure that they understand rulings like the Marbley ruling. We make sure that they're prepared to hit the streets. But it's exciting because a lot of them are very excited to come onto this department because the pay is better. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
The pay, it's a bigger city, a lot of different opportunities, and some people that were looking for change or have family reasons to want to transfer. Loved ones may have jobs already here, or people that are relocating. It's just a great opportunity to bring people on board.
Let's talk numbers. Where are we number-wise with needing more boots on the ground for our division?
We're going to always push for more numbers. Even with the numbers that we're allotted, we feel that we're going to at some point exceed that. But let's be realistic. It takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years to see significant changes when you're talking about personnel. Even in the reports and the studies that were done, they talked about increasing personnel. And that's what we're trying to do. The mayor has been very gracious and extended a third class. He's been very gracious in talking about allowing us to have the laterals and implementing that program. But those things take time to be able to bring to fruition and be able to have the vision and the image that you're looking for. So we're going to continue to recruit. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from people that are very interested in this department. And that class, the class that started in September, that class didn't exist 2 years ago. So that third class is important to be able to give people not just 2 opportunities, but 3. And even possibly with the laterals, maybe 4 or 5 opportunities within a year to be able to join this department.
How do you make this division set apart from others across the country? As you said, there's a nationwide shortage. Why come to Columbus? Why be a police officer in Columbus?
That's why it's important. That's why it's important for us to tell our story. That's why it's important to get people here. That's why it's important for them to understand the culture, get a chance to talk to the residents. It is a special place. I'm new. I'm new to Columbus. I had never been here prior to taking this opportunity to be the chief of police, and I will tell you, I feel like I'm at home. So it's a wonderful city. It's a great environment. It's a good place to be. So as long as we put our story out there and get people to understand that Columbus not only is a great city, but it's an up-and-coming city too. We've already, as you've seen in the past 10 years, have made monumental leaps in population. And when you look at the growth, when you look at the development, it's growing and it's just going to get better. So why not be a part of that?
Let's talk. How you doing?
I'm okay. It's been a year, a year of transformation. It's been a lot, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I think that this opportunity was amazing, and I hope and pray that I've given as much to Columbus as they've given to me.
Yeah, you passed that year mark back in July. If you had to grade yourself on the grading scale, what would you give yourself to this point?
So I think that I'm probably I'm hardest on myself. I'm my worst critic. Although we've made some significant strides, I still feel that we have, a ways to go. So I'm never going to go to the high scale because I always want something to be able to strive for. I would say maybe a B. We've had decrease in our homicides for the year. We've 62 less homicides than we were previous year. And even in 2020, we were at 123. So we're 17 less than we were even the year before that. So I think that that's significant. We've had an increase in our closure rate. We've closed 81 homicides this year, 63 from in year and 18 from previous years. That's significant. That's 81 families that have gotten justice. We have 238 less felonious assaults. That's 238 less victims on the streets than we did the previous year. Our closure rate, even with our felonious assaults, have increased almost 15% than last year. So that's significant as well. So when you think about things like that, when you think about the community interaction, the community engagement, we have citizens or residents that are always reaching out to us saying, hey, you put this out, I have a tip, I know where this person is. That community engagement is huge. To me, my biggest accomplishment, or this division's biggest accomplishment, has been the change or the shift in the way that we interact with our community. So that's extremely important to me. So for that part, I'm going to give not credit to myself, not credit to the assistant chiefs, not credit to the bosses, although they've been instrumental, but I'm going to give credit to the residents and to the officers, and for their ability to be able to put aside things that have occurred and come together and be able to make sure that we're doing the things that we need to do to make our residents feel safe, our community feel safe. I think that's really important. I was, I want to say, mentored by James Craig, former chief of police for not only Cincinnati, but Detroit. And there was one thing that he used to always say, and it resonated with me, and I take it everywhere I go. And that is, cops count, leadership matters. Cops count and leadership matters. Those two things go hand in hand. That's why it's extremely important for me as a leader to make sure that I'm accountable, because I don't look at it like the officers work for me. I work for them. I work for the residents. I'm a public servant, and it's important for me to make sure that I'm doing the things that I need to do as much as possible to make this the safest city.
I want to ask you a question you've probably never been asked before, which is why I'm a reporter.
Yes.
Do you feel like you were set up to be successful in this role?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I'm going to tell you this. When I applied for the job, one of the things that I did was I did my research and I did my homework on the city. You know, I had an opportunity. I looked around the nation. There were jobs, you know, as you know, police jobs everywhere. What drew me to Columbus was, believe it or not, the challenges. I felt like, you know, you can always go somewhere and sit and try to be safe, be a safe chief. I want to be a change agent. So when you ask me, do I feel like I was set up for success? I feel like I'm in the right place at the right time, and I feel like the residents and the officers have embraced me, and I feel that they were ready for a change and ready for something different. I hope that I'm providing that. I'm doing my best. Every day it's a new day for me, a new challenge for me to try to figure out what I can do, where I should be. I know that it's funny because a lot of people say, well, you know, you're always here, you're always there, and I'm not really a media person, as you know, because I want to be in the community. I do a lot of community meetings, I do a lot of community events, I talk to the officers at roll call. To me, that's the most important place that I can be, because that's where I learn what really needs to happen, and that's where I learn where the real issues are. So when you ask me, do I feel like I was set up for success, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes because I feel like people were ready. They were ready for a change, not just the residents, not just the division, but the city. So, yeah.
But when we're out and about, and we hear from viewers, people in the community, and there's this saying, oh, crime in Columbus, oh, it's a mini Chicago, it's a mini Detroit. Is that true? No.
Understand, and it's funny coming from a different perspective and being an outsider. Hopefully I'm an insider now, but coming from outside, when you look at it, when you look at a city that has almost 1 million people in population and you compare that crime, I understand this. One homicide is one too many. One felonious assault is one too many. That's why you never stop and you strive your best to decrease those numbers. But we're not. We're not a city that is a mini, whatever you want to call it. What we are is a city that had some turmoil. What we are is a city that went through 2020, between COVID, between civil unrest, between a lot of the issues, between personnel. We are a city that had its challenges, but we're also a city that's on a comeback. and you cannot tell me anything different. When you look at our numbers, when you look at the personnel, when you look at the effort that's being put into the city, even with the mayor, the initiatives, when you look at our Operation Unities, when you look at Operation Moonlight, when you look at the resources that are being poured into ensuring that we do whatever we can to decrease those numbers, you can't tell me that we are not a city that is coming back from something that affected everyone across the nation. I think we're doing phenomenally well. We are one of only 2 cities that have seen the increase in our homicide rates, almost 40%. That's huge. And again, that's a testament not to just me, but to this division as well as the residents. I can't tell you enough how much they have stepped up and helped us in being able to take some of these violent criminals off the street.
Yeah, let's talk about those numbers. I mean, because there's a hope that we can make Columbus the safest big city in America. Is it safe to say we're not there yet?
Well, we're never gonna stop striving to decrease those numbers, but I will tell you, in my opinion, I think this is one of the best cities, and it is a safer city. It's definitely a safer city. It's safer than it was last year, and it's probably going to be safer than it was this year when we talk again next year. That's the goal, is to continue to decrease those numbers. But understanding that when you have a population of almost 1 million people, unfortunately what you're going to see sometimes is an increase in things, whether it's car thefts or things of that nature. That's our goal. When we address violent crime, it's not just about violent crime, it's also about quality of life. So our focus, my focus when I first got here, obviously was violent crime and community interaction, making sure that we're bridging that gap, looking at our training, making sure that we're doing all the things that we can to make us the best division. But I also have to address and be cognizant of those quality of life issues because they matter. That's why we do those things like the Operation Broken Windows, while we're taking these abandoned cars off the streets, because all that matters. Children should be able to ride their bikes on the street and not worry about getting ran over by speeding drivers. Ms. Jones should be able to sit on her porch and not be worried about getting robbed on her porch. Those things matter. And so we're not just focusing on the violent crime, although that has been the hot topic and thing that everybody talk about, and we've done a great job at reducing that. But when you start looking at those quality of life crimes, we're putting dents in those as well.
Yeah, you're making the efforts. The city saw a single-year high for homicides in 2020. The homicides are down this year compared to last year. City figures showing that violent crimes dropping by 28% in the first part of this year compared to 2021, so about a 40% reduction of homicides. However, there are still those felonious assaults and rapes and those cases still out there. What will it take to maybe address those? You know, I don't like putting numbers on homicides because those are fathers, those are sons, but there are other crimes out there. You were talking about Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones, you know, you have a conversation with her, she's scared of these teens now.
100%.
It's totally different than when you and I were growing up, when you know, you were policing the bad guys. And now it appears that officers have to police the younger criminal element out there.
Well, I will tell you this, 2 things. When we talked about violent crimes, we're not just talking about homicides too, we are talking about felonious assaults, which includes non-fatal shootings, which includes assaults with any type of weapon, whether it be a knife, a bat. So those are, again, down 238 less victims than we had last year. So I think that's significant to note. But also when you talk about violent crime in youth, it's not just those quality of life crimes that we're talking about. When you look at our homicide victims and our suspects, when you look at our felonious assault suspects and victims, they're young. Yeah. They're young. We're talking about under 21. I think almost 40% of our suspects or victims are under 21. That's an issue. So those little crimes, they escalate. When you talk about stealing a car, and next time you steal it with a gun, and next time, so those things escalate. So it's important that we get ahead of it and try to address those youth before they get to that point, before they become a statistic. So when we look at our youth and violent crime or crime period, we're not just focused on the crime itself, but we're focused on the culture of our young people and what can we do to try to prevent or stop this. So our initiatives, our programs, bringing PAL back, the Police Athletic League, going into the schools, increasing our TAPS program, coming up with brotherhood and sisterhood, we have to get a hold of them at a young age. And when I say young, I'm talking about 9, 10, 11. We're not talking about high school. Sometimes that's too late. Young. So we're meeting with the judges, we're meeting with the county commissioners, we're meeting with people trying to figure out how do we address this issue as a community, because this is not just a police issue. This is a city issue, this is a community issue, this is a national issue. This isn't just happening in the city of Columbus. This is happening across the nation. So we have to figure out as a city, we have to collectively come together and figure out how do we address our youth. We have to get to them before they get to that point, before Ms. Jones have to worry about them, right? Yeah. So what do we do? How do we fix that? Those are the things that we're working on. I mean, and that's real. So, you know.
There's been a lot of debate back and forth. I mean, it has to be frustrating for your officers to maybe see the 16-year-old on Monday and then see him again Wednesday and see him again Friday, and 3 different stolen kids or breaking in 3 different houses. There's been this debate and back and forth that maybe there should be stricter laws for these juvenile offenders. Would you agree to that?
So that's a really sensitive topic, and I will tell you why. My concern is for the lives of these children as well. Not just, again, we talk about criminal element. Yes, when you steal a car, you are doing more than just stealing a car. You may be preventing a mother from being able to go to work. You may be, it's so many different elements and variables when you talk about that. But we also have to be mindful that the answer isn't to necessarily throw away the key and lock someone up forever, because a lot of times they come out better criminals. What do we do to address that issue, and how do we make sure that if we are going to have those stricter laws, that we're getting them the help that they need? So the services are going to be key. It's not just about locking them up. It's about providing that mental behavioral health. It's about making sure that they get that counseling. And it's about looking at their families from a holistic standpoint, because the majority of the time when you're dealing with some of those kids, it's not just that kid. They're not coming from this great home and going out and doing these crimes. They may be having situations where there's substance abuse in the family, domestic violence in the family. There may be a situation where you have a single mother working 3 jobs and she's not available. She's not there to watch her children, so the streets get a hold of them. So we're not just addressing that child and its crime, we're addressing a systemic issue. And we have to make sure that we're looking at all of that. So when we look at this 16-year-old and we want to lock them up based on stealing a car, yes, that's a crime and they definitely should pay for it. But what are we going to do when we have them in custody? Are we going to give them the help they need? Are we going to make sure that we're providing them a pathway to be able to, once they get out, be a productive citizen? What are we providing for them to make sure that they don't wind up in the system again at 21, 25, 28?
So what I'm hearing you say loud and clear is that we can't police our way out of this.
No, you cannot.
Do you think officers in your division and police in general take the blame more so than you should for issues that are bigger, their underlying issues?
I definitely think that policing as a whole across the nation takes the blame for a lot of things, but it's, again, a situation where we're one of the first lines that you see. When these things occur, the police are usually the first ones that are called. The police are the first ones that, encounter, whether it's the suspect or the victim. So yes, we tend to take a big part of that on our shoulders, but understanding that it's our responsibility to reach out to the rest of the city and to bring them in to make sure those conversations are being had. So we have big shoulders. We have big shoulders. We understand that a lot of times when the police are called to a scene, it's usually not a great thing. When we get called, people aren't happy. They're not in a good place, so they're angry, they're upset. There's usually some language that may not necessarily be the best language, but we understand that people are upset, and by the time they call us, things are way out of control. So we're professionals, and it's up to us to make sure that we're able to separate that, not take things personal, and be able to do the job that we were called to do and get them the help they need.
Let's talk about some success. So you have Operation Unity, taking guns off streets.
Yes.
And people have noticed on High Street, you don't see those ATVs and motorcycles roaring down the street.
Yes.
Would you say those are 2 major successes that I guess people can see visually?
Absolutely, and I will tell you that the residents, we cannot, we get so many calls and so many accolades for not only the operations that we've done, but people asking us to do more. Can you come in my neighborhood? Can you come here? And just, we're never gonna stop. We're gonna continue to do them. We're never gonna tell people where we're gonna be.
Yeah.
But we are gonna continue to do those because they've been extremely successful, and the residents have been extremely grateful for us coming out and doing those type of things. We take it all seriously. Again, when you talk about drag racing, when you talk about speeding, it's not just about the car. It's about the child that may be crossing the street. It's about the mother that may be coming home in the middle of the night. We want to make sure that we are addressing all those issues before they become, issues that could take a life or that could seriously injure someone.
Can you talk about morale within your division? I mean, when you got here, probably it wasn't the best. Where are we now? And since you've been here, some of the policy changes you've made.
Yep, so I would like to believe that morale is better. I go to a lot of roll calls and I talk to a lot of officers. The one thing that is extremely important for me is for them to know that they have a voice and that they're heard. So we create advisory panels, we talk to the officers, we invite them to come in and give us ideas. Any decisions that we're making that is going to affect them, we include them. It's about inclusion to ensure that we're getting the information because they're boots to the ground. They're going to know better than we what's going to be most effective. So we try to make sure that we are inclusive of our decisions, and I think that that has increased morale when they know that they have a voice, when they know that they're being heard. Even when it comes to policy changes, when you are having those conversations and when you're engaging with the officers at all ranks, I think it's easier for them to understand and relate to why you're making some of the changes that you're making and why it makes sense. When you talk about policies, one of my jobs coming in and as building my team with the assistant chiefs and the deputy chiefs, it's our job to daily evaluate things when they come across our desk. We're not just looking at policies when things happen. We're looking at policies all the time. Does it make sense? Can we do it better? Is there a more effective way? Should there be more accountability? So when we look at policy changes, we're not just looking at things, oh, this happened, we better look at the policy. We're continuously looking at policies, and we make changes all the time. We want to make sure that our middle managers, our supervisors, our command staff are being as engaged as they possibly can, because it's important for the officers to know that they're being supported on the streets, and it's important for them to know that they have someone to go to if they have a question. So accountability is huge for me. Again, cops count, leadership matters. We have to make sure that our supervisors, our managers are fully engaged and they know what's going on in those particular neighborhoods.
And since we're talking policy, and I know I can't ask you about open litigation, but one of your last policy big changes that made headlines was not serving those warrants at overnight hours. What was your thought process and what kind of advice or input did you get into making that decision?
So again, one of those policies that we looked at, and let's be clear, it's never a policy to say you can never do something, because there are going to be situations and instances where you want to serve warrants. My policy or my change was very specific, again, to leadership, to accountability, to those lieutenants, those bosses, making sure that they are engaged in that process to try to determine the validity and why we're doing this and what's the reason and why it's necessary. I want our bosses to be more engaged, as they should be, with our officers, to ensure that we're doing things that are not just about the safety of the officer, but the safety of everyone as a whole, the community, the residents. So when we look at policies, does it make sense? Is there enough accountability? So those are the things that we did.
2 years ago, during George Floyd, there were cries for rebuilding trust between officers and police. Are we there yet?
I think that we are way closer than we were. I think that we are in a situation where we have the ability to build upon the things that we've learned. And I will tell you, the one thing that sticks out to me, and a lot of people don't know, a lot of people make the assumption that officers are this droid. They go home and they plug themselves in the closet and hang themselves up. Their mothers, sisters, brothers, uncles, they have issues. They have sick kids. They have family members that have substance abuse issues. All of it. We're human just like everybody else. I remember going to the precinct and talking to officers after several incidents that occurred, and one of the things that stuck in my mind, I said to the officers, how do you feel? Like, what is your thought process? Where are you? And some of them expressed to me, we're concerned. We don't know how the residents feel about us. We don't know, if they're going to think differently of us, and we just want to be out here and do our job. So that sticks and resonates with me because they do feel, they do care. And when I run into residents, and I'll never forget having an advisory board at Ohio State, and one of the things they said to me was, the officers don't speak to us. And I said, well, do you speak to them? And it was just funny because they go, well, no. I said, let's do a study. I'm just curious. Next time you see an officer, just walk up and say hi, see what happens. And they came back to me and was like, oh my God, I walked up to this officer, we had this long conversation, we talked about tattoos. It's just amazing because sometimes when you see an officer and you see this face, you're making the assumption that they're angry or they're upset, but you don't know necessarily what just happened. Did they just come away from a scene where a child was ejected from a vehicle? You know, did they just experience, you don't know what's going on with the officer, and you don't know what they're feeling. So that's a two-way street. And that's one of the things that I've been very adamant about, making sure that they understand that it's not just about the officer's engagement, but it's about the community's engagement. And we've come a long way. I've had so many people come up to me and say officers are more personable. They have more interaction with them. We have officers buying teenagers pizzas in the park because they were hungry and they didn't have any money. We have officers that are helping people in so many ways that people don't know about. These are the things that don't make the news because they're not about the news. They're about the human being. They're about that interaction. So that's really important.
We're not hearing of those crimes at our parks. I mean, a few months ago, I mean, they seem to be back to back to back. Talk about what's gone into that to ensure the safety at our area parks.
So one of the things that we did, we had to figure out, okay, we got this summer coming and we're opening up the world, right? We got Red, White, and Boom, we got Pride, we got Juneteenth, we got the Arts and Beats Fest. We have all these things that are coming, right? So how do we make sure that we are providing a safe environment? How are we making sure that everyone is going to be able to come down, have a good time, and making sure that our parks are safe? Because kids, they were cramped up. People were not going out like they were. Now we have families that want to come enjoy the parks. They want to be out. They want to skateboard. They want to bike. What do? We came up with Operation Moonlight. We wanted to ensure that the officers were going to be engaged. They were going to be out there, and it was more about their visibility, their presence, their interaction than it was about anything else. So between Memorial Day and a little bit after Labor Day, we extended it a few weeks. We had officers working Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you know, at a higher rate. But again, when you talk about asking officers to give up their time with their family, asking them to sacrifice their summer, they were out there, they were visible, they were engaged, and I will tell you how many officers came up to me and said that it was positive for them too, that they had opportunities to engage with residents. They had opportunities to meet people that they hadn't necessarily would have never met. We had officers on bikes. We had them in patrol cars. We had them on foot. So I think that absolutely led to the safety. And I've had a lot of residents actually come up to me and say that from Red, White, and Boom, that was the safest Red, White, and Boom they've ever had, or they felt really safe coming downtown. They felt really, really, you know, like it was a good environment. It's the state fair.
Yeah.
0 incidents.
Yeah. In recent weeks, Chief, we've seen issues on High Street in the Short North, disturbing video of a young man being attacked and later dying. What efforts? I mean, we've seen officers on bikes, we see stepped up patrol. Is that enough? Can we do more in that area? Is there more needed to be done in that area?
We can always do more. We can do more everywhere we go, not just that area, but across the city as a whole. And that's what we're working on. We're working on real-time crime centers. We're working on being able to make sure that we have the resources in the right areas and to make sure that the city is safe as a whole. There's going to be some more announcements coming up later that you'll hear about. That is very
Wait a minute, later? This is why I'm talking to you now, Chief.
You know, that are going to be specific to to address some of those concerns that you talk about. But yes, we make sure that we are looking at all that as a whole, not just one neighborhood. It's not just about Short North. It's not just about the university area. It's about every place, Hilltop, Linden, everywhere you go. We want to make sure that people and the residents feel safe in their community.
Well, we bring up the Short North because that's where most of the tourists come, right? And they go to the convention center to hang out in the Short North. So you just want to make sure they feel safe.
Yeah, and I think that we've done a pretty good job. We've been chipping away at a lot of that and making sure that we're putting the resources there. But again, like I said, you'll hear about some stuff later.
Well, I want to get back to that because when you came in, you spoke about a number of initiatives and a number of ideas you had. I mean, let us a little inside scoop on something that's coming. I mean, you talked about the real-time crime centers, and is there any idea or any thought of expanding ShotSpotter? That seems to be successful with alerting your officers to shots fired in neighborhoods.
Everything is on the table at this point. There is nothing that we aren't looking at that would be for the benefit of our community as a whole. So when you look at resources, when you look at cameras, when you look at reserve programs, trying to get more reserve officers to come join the department so that we're able to, do more crime prevention. We're looking at bringing back the Citizens Police Academy. There's a lot of things that we're looking at that we're trying to make sure, but you got to remember, how long have I been here?
A year and 2 months.
Give me some time.
Give you some time.
Yes, give me some time. We're working. So, it's been a very packed year.
So don't get caught up into the numbers. Your assessment would be the city is safe.
Yes, I would tell you that when you look across the board, we do have a safe city. And I will say this, there are a lot of instances that people look at, even with our homicides or our crimes, those are not just random. Understand, a lot of those are targeted, a lot of those are specific, a lot of those, some of them are domestic in nature. So I know people don't understand or really think about that, but it's not just some random situations going on out here. There are some, don't get me wrong, but a lot of those instances are specific.
Can I ask you about that? Because your administration before really didn't talk about this word, and I believe that you are more aggressive on this, but gangs. Mm-hmm. Is that an issue in our city, and is that where some of this violence spurs from?
So there are groups that perpetuate violence. So that is one of the reasons why CVR, Columbus Violence Reduction, has been initiated through the Director of Public Safety's office to focus on those groups of individuals that are perpetuating some of the crime. And I will tell you that when you do that, there is a small number of people that are small group. When you talk about 1 million people, there's a small number that are actually perpetuating the majority of our violent crime. And we're focused, laser focused, on ensuring that we're addressing that. And one of those initiatives will be the Columbus Violence Reduction. So
you used the keyword groups. Is that group a gang, or is it?
So there's things that would label it to be a gang, and I'm not at this point privy to tell you how many gangs. I don't have that information. But we always identify and look at groups of individuals that are perpetuating violence. So there's certain levels that would make that a gang.